Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:06 on this Thursday morning, the 9th day of November. Thank you so much for tuning in here to O'Connor and Company. I am live in Miami with post-debate hangover Patrice Onwuka. So,
oh, Larry, I'm glad you're up so early. I don't know how you did it.
I'm using the term hangover only as a euphemism. Of course, I had no adult beverages last night. I was too busy.
Really?
Running around. No, I really didn't. I wish I had. But it was a fascinating and fun debate, and I'll give you all of my firsthand reaction to it, analysis. We got some exclusive audio, including what I think is a pretty big item of news that we got out of Ronna McDaniel with regard to the Virginia elections and a whole lot else. That's all coming up. Also at 6:35, Gary Higgins, brand new member of the House of Delegates for the Republicans in Virginia. 7:05, Sean Spicer, his reaction to the debate last night and the elections in Virginia. 7:35, Bob Anderson on his victory over Buddha Biberai, one of the most consequential victories of the day on Tuesday. And then at 8:35, Senator Katie Britt, brand new book from the senators. That's all going on. You're Patrice Onwuka, aren't you?
I am, and it is Thursday.
Nah, not Thursday.
No. Tomorrow, Friday. Today, just Thursday.
And I'm Larry O'Connor. And yeah, so it was a we're down to 6 candidates now, and 5 of them showed up for the debate, except for the one who's actually the dominant front runner and will probably win the nomination. But it was still an impressive display yesterday. It was very much Nikki versus Ron, and Nikki versus Vivek, and Ron versus Vivek, and everybody. Well, Vivek versus everybody.
Yes.
Vivek took on everyone, including, as you'll hear in cut 1, it was really an extraordinary opening statement from him. The question for Vivek, if you'll all remember, the question for each of the candidates was, how do you, basically, why are you here? Well, what's the point? How do you win this primary?
Give us your opener,
The opening question, how do you win this primary when you're going up against Donald Trump, who is the clear front runner and won't even participate in these debates, which I think actually was kind of an odd question for Lester Holt because, okay, then Lester, why are you doing the debate? But
if there's not some value to this discussion.
The primary question, if I can use that as a pun, for every single Republican voter is, convince me why I shouldn't vote for Donald Trump. That's every single one of these candidates needs to make that case. Because all of them, to a certain degree, even Chris Christie, supported Donald Trump and his policies at some point, but now they're trying to say that, yeah, I supported Donald Trump then, but now you've got to vote for me instead of Donald Trump. That's a weird one, right? And you have to make that case. Sure, he was fine then, but now the vote should come here. Vivek Ramaswamy turned that question around, and take a listen to what he did.
Why should you be the nominee and not the former president?
I think there's something deeper going on in the Republican Party here, and I am upset about what happened last night. We've become a party of losers at the end of the day. It was a cancer in the Republican establishment. Let's speak the truth. I mean, since Ronna McDaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018, 2020, 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023. And I think that we have to have accountability in our party. For that matter, Ron, if you want to come on stage tonight, you want to look the GOP voters in the eye and tell them you resign, I will yield my time to you. And frankly, look, the people there cheering for losing in the Republican Party. Think about who's moderating this debate. This should be Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk. We'd have 10 times the viewership, asking questions that GOP primary voters actually care about and bringing more people into our party.
Well, he went even further on the media and said, why should you be holding us accountable for our political positions when you've never been held accountable for peddling the Russian collusion lie
Kristen
here
Balker,
on NBC.
Yeah, exactly. He eviscerated Ronna McDaniel. He literally, that was a drop the mic moment when he said, come on up stage and resign.
Yeah.
And man, I think it was interesting that he pivoted away from the real question, which is why you and not Trump, and he went to, no, why are we losers? And I think that actually is a question that a lot of Republican voters are thinking right now. Why do we keep losing? There is a common denominator.
Well, interesting, because as he was going through those years of losses, I want to say something. He's right. Since Ronna McDaniel's been chairman, we've lost in 2018, 2020, 2022, and now 2023, not counting Glenn Youngkin's win in 2021. Could also take that exact same data point and say, since Donald Trump was elected the leader of the party and president of the United States, we've lost in 2018. Now, I'm not saying that is causation, but in the same way, that means maybe it's not Ronna McDaniel either. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying that you fall into a trap when you start making that argument.
Door. Yeah.
And ironically, the one prominent Republican who continued to win consistently each of those years dated was Kevin McCarthy as leader of the House Republicans. All right. Well, I caught up to Ronna McDaniel in the spin room afterwards, as you can imagine. And by the way, you should all understand the dynamic here. When Vivek did that, Ronna McDaniel was sitting in the front. This is her show.
Literally right in front of her.
Oh, yeah. Right in front of him in the front row, maybe 15 feet away. And before the cameras were turned on, in the auditorium, it was Ronna McDaniel who was the first person on the stage to stand and welcome everybody. This was her show, in a way, because this is an RNC presentation, and she's the chairwoman of the RNC, which, by the way, also kind of supports Vivek's argument, which is, if this is our show, why are we handing it off to NBC, right? All right. So I caught up to Ronna McDaniel in the spin room. I asked her about that, but then I also asked her about Virginia. And I want you to listen to what she had to say, and then we'll discuss it. Take a listen.
How are you? So that was rough to hear from Vivek, wasn't it?
Listen, I'm going to focus on Joe Biden. I've said this to you on your show, though, before. This Republican on Republican vitriol and infighting is not good for our party. I'm not running for president. I'm here trying to win for our party. He just lost a vote. He lost my son's vote. I'll tell you that much. But I will say this. The voters don't want to see this. They want to see us talk about the border. They want to see us talk about Israel. They want to see us talk about how we can win. And when you do that, you're not talking about Joe Biden and the Democrats.
What's your analysis of the results in Virginia, though? You know, we on our radio station, we were...
The RNC's not a state committee. We're a federal committee, right? Your candidates can take unlimited state dollars, and your governor can take unlimited state dollars. And he actually said, we don't need you guys here. So I will say this about Virginia. Your governor did a great job. He got in. He's pushing the bank the vote. But if you were there watching the ads like I was, every Democrat ad was about abortion. Every Republican ad was about crime. And we're cross-talking. And if Republicans can't get up and say they are lying to you about my position on abortion on TV, then the lie becomes the truth. And that's what I will say. And I did not see that in Virginia.
But go ahead. No, that's fine.
Jumped in and asked a question. So hold on.
Let people lie about you and let it go unanswered. Let it go unanswered. If somebody's spending $30 million against you and they're lying about you and say you won't give life-saving care for miscarriages or an ectopic pregnancy, you better get on TV and tell them that the voters that that's a lie, or they think that's the truth. And our candidates have got to do this. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can go and say, this is where I stand. The Democrats are lying. And now let's talk about crime, schools, border, fentanyl, and national security.
I just want to clarify one quick thing, though. The RNC had no involvement in these elections in Virginia per Governor Youngkin's request?
We were told in the summer they didn't need us, that they had all the money and they were good. So that was the conversation.
Thanks for your time.
All right. Couple of things there that I think are eye-opening and eyebrow-raising, and we will flesh it out a little bit in just a moment. Because honestly, I got to tell you, coming out of last night's debate, one of the biggest storylines was Vivek Ramaswamy and Ronna McDaniel. That's why we're kind of leading with this story, especially since I was able to get that fascinating response from her last night, especially how it relates to us here in these elections. So we'll get into it in a moment. It's 5:15. WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes first on the fives. Jamie Whitten is in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
Mark Levin, weekdays 6 till 9 p.m.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
So Vivek Ramaswamy comes out of the gate last night, demands the resignation of Ronna McDaniel.
Yeah, that was his opening bid.
For two reasons. The first is we've become a party of losers. We've lost every election since Ronna McDaniel. and also because why did she hand this over to the media? We'll get into his media arguments in a moment. We've got that audio. But I followed up with her, as you just heard, and I said, tell me about this and tell me about Virginia. A couple of things that stuck out to me. First of all, she kept referring to Governor Glenn Youngkin as your governor, the Virginia governor, not by his name, which I thought was odd. And
you could tell when someone's a little bit pissed off.
Yeah.
That's the kind of language they use.
Yeah. So I wonder if there's some friction between Youngkin and the chairwoman. Mm-hmm. But then she said, we didn't have any money there at their request. I followed up. I said, let me just be clear here. You're telling me the RNC had absolutely no involvement in Tuesday's Virginia elections at Governor Youngkin's request? And she said, we were told we've got enough money. Stay out of it. Now, that's, I think, kind of a big story and a little shocking. Just so you know, for the record, Republicans were way outspent by Democrats statewide in Virginia. I would be shocked, frankly. I'm not saying anybody is being disingenuous, but maybe they have not all the information right. But I would be shocked if the governor and his team said no to any money infused into campaigns. What she did say, though, by the way, which I think is very smart and a good observation, because we made it yesterday, is that the candidates weren't good at responding to the attacks on them. They did have relentless attacks on abortion, and they never really responded with clarity for the most part. And that was a problem, and I don't think she's wrong. But this idea that Governor Youngkin, I mean, we need to get to the bottom of this, and somebody needs to get to the Youngkin office and find out if this is true.
Yeah. Well, listen, obviously she's going to want to distance herself and not give credence to Vivek's argument that, the RNC is part of the common denominator of all the losses. In Virginia, if it is the case that the campaign said, hey, we're good, we're fine, I don't know, wouldn't it still be important to check in as you're watching these ads stack up within the past 2 weeks and say, hey, guys, are you sure you're good? Are you sure you have enough resources? I would think if the priority is ensuring that Virginia was a win, I would think that the RNC would want to be as proactive as possible. Right. But that said, to your point, Ronna McDaniel was absolutely right about abortion, and I hope that every candidate in 2024 is taking copious notes about what needs to be how conservatives need to respond. And I'm just going to put it out there, Independent Women's Voice. We've been talking about this issue and how conservatives can talk about it without sticking their head in the sand and actually address it. But taking that hat off, I'm just going to say, last night was, I'm glad that you got her on the record, and I'm glad that you got her to respond to Vivek. And I don't think she had a really good response other than that my son is not going to vote for her.
Right.
Vote for him, sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, that's not good enough. She actually does have to say, well, wait a minute. Well, why did we lose? And what could we have done better? And I haven't heard a lot of what could we do better coming from the RNC.
For the record, Virginia, Democrats in Virginia outspent Republicans $35.2 million to $27.6 million. That's not an insignificant amount. And one wonders if individual candidates who were running knew that the RNC was told, we don't want your money here. I would think individual candidates may have would have been fine with getting some of that RNC money. All right, well, that's kind of a thing, and we're going to figure out exactly what the reality is there. A little bit more, again, listen, major storyline out of last night was Vivek Ramaswamy and his...
He stole the show. Let's just put it out there. He stole the show. Yes,
and you're right. He may have lost Ronna McDaniel's son's vote, but I'll tell you, I got a couple of friends that are sort of Gen Z. They loved him last night. They loved.
I'm not surprised because he owned the stage.
He did. I also think he's
and
wrong
the hosts.
He's wrong on several policies, in my opinion. But when you're in a debate, sometimes your mode of delivery is more important than even what your policy is.
Yeah.
We'll get into more of that and his specific attack on NBC and the media in just a moment. It's 5:22. Said, listen, we are going to get to the other candidates, and especially on this abortion question, Patrice.
Yes.
One of the last questions had to do with that. A lot of people were praising Nikki Haley for the way she answered the question. A lot of praise for Tim Scott and for Ron DeSantis. We're going to start getting into that and talking to you about some other things that happened on the stage. But honestly, this opening salvo from Vivek Ramaswamy sort of set the tone for the entire evening. Here's a little bit more of what he had to do, that pivot that he made on the debate moderators in the very first question.
Do you think the Democrats, and we've got Kristen Welker here, do you think the Democrats would actually hire Greg Gutfeld to host a Democratic debate? They wouldn't do it. And so the fact of the matter is, Kristen, I'm going to use this time because this is actually about you in the media and the corrupt media establishment. Ask you, the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that you pushed on this network for years, was that real or was that Hillary Clinton made up disinformation? Answer the question. Go.
Mr. Ronna.
Sorry. This is how we get our country back. We need accountability because this media rigged the 2016 election. They rigged the 2020 election with the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
and they're going to rig this election.
Your time is up.
Accountability.
Let me turn to Governor Christie. Why you, Swamy? Let me turn to you.
There you go.
He went scorched earth, but somebody needed to do it because honestly, I think a lot of people have been fooled by NBC and a lot of these hosts who are just pretending like nothing happened. And so, while it wouldn't have been my opening statement, I'm not mad at him for doing it. You have the moment, you have the time, use it however you want to, and I think that's going to set a new probably standard for how these debates move going forward.
Well, it's funny. Up until this point, Patrice, it was Ron DeSantis who had taken a moment from the first two debates to go after the moderators because of the specific questions they asked. Vivek obviously wanted to beat him to the punch on this one. There is something kind of rich and infuriating that you've got members of the media supposedly holding our candidates, Republican candidates, accountable for their positions and fact-checking them when they've never been held accountable or ever fact-checked over the lie of Russian collusion. And I think that's a strong point. More on last night's debate coming up in a moment. It's 5:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
Another busy day here as we bounce right from the Virginia election results right into the GOP debate and the Trump rally last night, and we got you covered all across the board. Also coming up at 6:35, Gary Higgins on his victory in Northern Virginia. 7:05, Sean Spicer on all of the above. 7:35, Bob Anderson, your new Commonwealth's attorney, Loudoun County. Honestly, the most important victory of Tuesday, getting Buddha Bibarai out of there. And then at 8:35, Senator Katie Britt will join us. She's got a brand new book out. I'm Larry O'Connor with Patrice Sanwuka. Good morning, Patrice.
Yeah. Good morning. Good post-debate morning.
Yeah, and we've got a lot to talk about. We spent a lot of time there, obviously, talking about the little dust-up between Vivek Ramaswamy and Ronna McDaniel. I was in the spin room afterwards. I grabbed her, and you heard not only what she had to say about that, but also about the Virginia elections. We'll get into more of that. I also pulled aside Hogan Gidley. Hogan Gidley, of course, was the deputy press secretary for the Trump White House, worked the entire 4 years of the presidency, and was terrific. I think he's one of the smartest guys in political communications today. He was there giving analysis for NBC News, which say what you will about NBC News, bringing in Hogan Gidley and Mary Catherine Ham as some of the political analysts on their panel discussion, I think is really smart.
Absolutely.
And they're really good minds. I pulled Hogan aside a bit and got his take on the debate and where the election stands right now, and here's that.
Hogan Gidley, former spokesperson for the White House and doing yeoman's work for NBC tonight, right?
I am, absolutely.
What did you think of the debate?
I don't think it changes anything, but I thought that the questions were substantive, the answers were substantive. Whenever the moderators aren't the story, that's kind of a good thing. Although, there were some fireworks here and there.
I think Vivek made a pretty good point. I mean, you guys are trying to hold us accountable. You still haven't been held accountable for Russian collusion. I mean, you had to deal with that in the White House.
It's always a good moment when you can call out the media for the stuff they do to us, and he took that opportunity to do it. Remember when Newt Gingrich went after Juan Williams in South Carolina back in 20?
Vividly.
He ought to send Juan Williams a fruit basket and some flowers as a thank you, because it made him shoot up in the polls because of it. So it's low-hanging fruit to go after the media because, there's a reason their popularity is somewhere between Congress and COVID, because they're always, they're always doing the wrong thing.
There goes Governor DeSantis. He just did his NBC. Do you think Governor DeSantis did enough to separate himself from the pack and get closer to Trump's numbers?
From the pack tonight, no.
Wow.
From get closer to Trump's numbers, no. Look, everyone's up there saying we're going to do everything he already did. So it's a tough place to be in. I mean, it's hard to break out when you're trying to say, I promise I'll put in place the policies that the first guy did. When you know the first guy did it, he'll do it again. There's some nuances and some differences here and there, but I don't know if it's enough to break out. Look, nothing really matters, I think, anymore until people start voting. That's what's going to matter. And I work for someone in Rick Santorum and Mike Huckabee were at 1%, didn't catch fire till Christmas in Iowa. And so we know that can happen, but Trump is a former president, which is a big difference than any other time. And he's up 40 points, for heaven's sake. So it's a tough task for anybody.
So you mentioned Rick Santorum, Mike Huckabee, and I see Tim Scott up there is sort of in that lane, right? Really nice guy, good on family values. But I'm almost thinking he's too nice for today's GOP. For a post-Trump era, can a nice guy even win the nomination?
A nice guy can, of course.
And I'm not saying President Trump isn't nice, but you know what I mean.
I know what you're saying. Look, Tim Scott is my senator. I'm from South Carolina. I love Tim. Just gave him a hug a second ago. Did a good job tonight, too. Had some great lines about country and very uplifting. I mean, look, his story going from cotton to Congress. I mean, come on. That is the American dream to face the adversity and confront the problems of the past and then succeed in spite of those. His story is amazing. But I don't know that he is where the base is right now. I mean, I think people are looking for a little more anger, a little more, urgency out there. And I don't know that he has that. Doesn't mean he's not a great guy. Doesn't mean he's not a great senator. It's just, I don't know that that's going to be, it's kind of a Mike Pence lane, if you will. And I work with Mike Pence. So I was with him in the White House, but I think right now the voters are looking for somebody a little more fiery because they see what the incoming is with the left. They see the weaponization of the three-letter agencies going after people if you like the wrong tweet or come on the wrong live stream.
No, I saw the comment you made on the NBC pre-debate show about that right in the last few minutes. It was brilliant. We were all cheering you on for that one because that is existential to freedom of speech.
No question. And it's unbelievable to me that so many other members of the media aren't angry and doing reports on censorship when their whole livelihood is built upon freedom of speech.
Well, the problem is many of them benefited from who was being silenced.
That's a whole other thing.
Last question. It took about an hour and a half to get to a question about abortion, about life. It's a fundamental issue for Republican voters, and it was framed within yesterday's election results. Were you satisfied by the answers that you heard on stage? Because this is an issue that Republicans need to be able to talk about and win with.
Yeah, they should, and they can. Look, I think people need to understand the way to talk about it. And there's a way to discuss our side, the standing up for life. But there's also a political reality that exists. That not everyone is 100% pro-life. They have some different options out there. But then also the part that I wanted to see was we need to go on the offense here because the left, every single U.S. senator but one voted for a bill that would allow for abortion anywhere, anytime. For any reason up until the moment of birth, and they want you to pay for it. And 90% of the country rejects that. We have to make them answer for their position. I'll defend my position on life. They need to defend their position on death. And when you understand that most Americans are somewhere in that 15, 16 week, they understand 4 months that we need to start thinking about it. That's where I think we need to find that sweet spot.
Why aren't you working for one of those candidates? Seriously, why couldn't any one of them say what you just said?
Well, I don't work for him. That's why. You know what I mean?
See, we got to get this guy a job.
Tape.
There you go.
No.
We'll send it along.
I'm doing fine now, but I'm doing some stuff over at American First Policy Institute. We're about to start releasing these kind of talking points and trying to get people on the same page. Because, you have to talk about adoption, of course. You have to talk about it's not just the child. It's the mother, too, right? You have two lives at stake here, and you have to figure out how to talk and communicate with the rest of the country so that people understand your position is one that is sane, that is rational, and reduces abortions. That's what it's about, right? Protecting women and reducing the number of abortions. The left will never agree to that because that's not what they want.
Always a great conversation. Hogan Gidley. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
If political communications is an art, Hogan Gidley is Pablo Picasso. He's just one of the best. And as you heard, I wish the candidates were as good about talking about these issues as he was.
Well, I mean, he said so much. I mean, he talked about just broadly how substantive the discussions were yesterday. There were some nuances, and he's absolutely right, but it was mostly, okay, I can do Trump, but Trump better. I think he was absolutely spot on about how to talk about the abortion issue beyond just a baby's life. And a baby's life is paramount. Yes, we understand that, but there's also still other factors. And there's a political reality versus a purist reality. He made that distinction, which is really important. You can win you can be a purist, but then you're not winning politically. And how do we thread the needle to do both? And so I thought he was fantastic. I'm sure. I could absolutely see him as a press secretary or comms director in the next Trump administration if there is one. Yeah.
Listen, a lot of people think that Tim Scott's answer on abortion was one of the better ones. We caught up with Senator Cory Gardner, who was spinning for Tim Scott. You'll hear what he had to say next. But Patrice Onwuka, it's a busy morning here as we recap last night's debate in Miami. I'm down in Miami, by the way. I was at the debate well into
I could see your tan, Larry.
Oh, yes. I spent so much time on the beach. I caught up to Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado. He was there on behalf of his preferred candidate, Senator Tim Scott. And here's what that sounded like.
Great to you here for your colleague, Senator Scott.
You got it.
So what do you think of his performance tonight?
I thought it was excellent tonight. I thought you saw a leader in Tim Scott who defined and led the debate, whether it was on the economy, whether it was on energy, whether it was on life. Tim Scott crafted and led the other candidates on the stage tonight. They were responding to him. That's why he won this debate. That's why the audience showed the respect that they did to Tim Scott. That's why, quite frankly, the candidates on stage showed the respect. How he united and brought people together, that's why he will make an incredible president.
Senator Scott, it seems like he's trying to find that faith and family values lane, especially for the Iowa caucus, now that Vice President Pence is out of the debate. Do you think his answer on the abortion question really solidified that vote in Iowa?
Look, he is the lane on faith and opportunity in this country. Somebody who can quote scripture, but also live it out in real life. The fact is, he is a candidate who will make America feel good about itself again. And tonight he showed he is the most conservative candidate on that stage, and he's the most conservative candidate who will win, not just the primary, but the presidential race.
Do you think Republican voters right now want somebody more combative, though? I mean, everyone seems to respond to sort of the fighting. And let's face it, we've had many years of President Trump who sort of exemplifies that. Is Tim Scott too nice to win the Republican nomination?
If you watch the scrum that broke out in the middle of the debate stage tonight, you saw it break out in the second debate. You saw it break out in the first debate. Leadership matters, and that's why Tim Scott exhibits it every single time he's on that stage. I think the American people know Tim Scott is a fighter. Look, he has fought his entire life. He said tonight, the proof of his life disproves their lies.
Yeah.
That is somebody who grew up knowing that because he is a conservative, people were going to try to treat him differently, because they automatically expect that he should adhere to left policies of the Democratic Party. He's fought against that tide his entire life. So there is nobody who is a greater fighter on that stage than Tim Scott.
Republican voters are going to be like, hey, Biden's not a nice guy. Biden calls us names. We need someone who's going to push back and fight against Biden.
And I can't wait for Tim Scott and Joe Biden to be on a stage together, because guess what? Tim Scott has lived everything that Joe Biden has told stories about.
What did you think of Ramaswamy's opening foray against the RNC, against Ronna McDaniel, and the choice of moderators tonight?
Well, they may rescind the invitation. I'm not sure. Look, I mean, you saw what happened when Tim Scott disagreed with Lester Holt. Because fundamentally, Lester Holt doesn't understand economics. The fact is, that's not just a Ramaswamy position. You saw Tim Scott have to go after the moderators because they don't understand that future supply matters to present cost.
All right, Senator, thank you, man.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Spin away.
You got it.
Spin away. He was spinning away. There's Cory Gardner there for his guy. Listen, again, the fun dynamic there in the spin room is everybody comes out and says, my guy won, my gal won.
My guy's the best. My guy's going to take on Biden.
Obviously, they couldn't all win.
Yeah.
It was, I think, I would argue, Tim Scott's best debate performance for sure. And I think part of that is because there were fewer candidates. They all had a chance to sort of ease into it and settle in.
Well, and for the most part, the candidates didn't talk over each other and occupy each other's time. So, he was absolutely asked questions. I think he brought a level of gravitas to the stage. There was kind of where the others were, I'm dirty, I'm down and gritty, I can fight and, take this to the alley type of candidate. He stepped out, and every time he stood to speak, he was calm. he presented himself as, okay, I'm not just an adult, but I'm a person of high esteem, and I want to bring that to the presidency. And I think that kind of air about him came across. But at the same time, he was still trying to get in there, trying to get his jabs in, trying to get his responses in. You know, he just communicates in a different way than some of the other candidates do. But I think it was refreshing compared to how the others were kind of tit for tat going at each other as cats, alley cats. So.
We've got more analysis of the day. We're going to play lots of audio from the debate as well coming up in the next hour, as well as continued analysis of the Virginia elections, the good news and the bad news. And yes, there was good news out of the Virginia elections.
You and Julie did a great job of teasing that out yesterday morning, by the way, Larry.
Oh, thank you.
The bright spots. It was good to listen to.
We had a lot of good news to where we got a lot of rich news.